I invited Christian here today so he can share more about the work we've been doing together and what we've been learning. So let me invite Christian up to the stage here.
We are scientists. We're scientists into understanding how we lead our lives as human beings, how we interact with each other, how we interact with stuff. That stuff could be cars or glasses or anything like that, but like how do we make sense of our world, and how are human beings, which might be the most complicated thing in this universe, how are we trying to lead our lives in ways that we don't necessarily think about, but just that we do in everyday experience. And we do that by observing. Just like anthropologists did 100 years ago, they would observe a tribe in Africa. We sort of taken that and pushed it parallel in to understand the tribe of Ford users. So we're not so interested in necessarily Ford users as users or as customers, but as people, just general, what's their life like? And use that to understand what would be wonderful experiences for them, what are the things that annoys them, and how could we innovate against things that they can't talk about, but that you can clearly observe by looking at them and staying with them for a while.
Yeah, I think some of this is probably going to sound as very natural, but a couple of aha moments for me as to why we were perhaps running into issues and why we need to rethink this process. First, as is well known, we were responding to some customer feedback on a couple of our systems. My Ford Touch was one of those. And in looking at My Ford Touch and how to redesign My Ford Touch into Sync 3, we really took a very different approach of not necessarily asking customers what their issues were, but really observing how they were using the system. A system that made sense to designers and engineers, but clearly our customers were having difficulty. Mark mentioned before, we've been making a lot of trips out to Silicon Valley, and certainly some of the discussions out there. I remember a discussion with Tony Fidel of Nest, designed the Nest thermostats, and he asked me some questions without getting specific about the car, and well, why do you guys do that? And I have to admit, when he first asked me, it kind of pissed me off. But it's just, well, you clearly don't understand automotive engineering. But then on the flight back, it really got me thinking, well, why do we do it that way? And the final thing is, we're really getting to the point of a level of technology in the vehicle that even people in the industry have a hard time understanding that level and that capability and how to actually use it. There'll be times that we're sitting in you guys know our BPR meetings, and we go through the business environment and we'll talk about a new feature being enabled by a competitor, and someone will ask the question, well, why don't we have that? And the answer sometimes is, well, we actually do have that, and I saw what you drove in this morning, and it's actually on your car. But that's a failure on us as a product development team, that we've got technologies in our vehicles that our customers don't recognize and don't necessarily know how to use. So this kind of turned the light on to me, and one of our Sync 3 members gave me a book called Moment of Clarity, which the author is sitting here with me today. And it really turned on a process that we do somewhat intuitively, but not as consciously as we should, and not to the expanse that we should. And one of the examples that really struck me, Christian, you want to talk about it, was the TV example.
Yeah, so I worked with Samsung for the Korean TV, among other things, producer, for more than 10 years, since they were a different company than they are today, much smaller and less glossy. And at the time, they looked at TVs as something men buys. They buy it as consumer electronics, and it's all about the specs. That was the logic. Then we looked at real families living real lives and how they actually buy TVs, and it turns out that in 8 out of 10 cases, women choose which TVs is going into the home. And I can tell you that if you own a Samsung TV, a woman has probably been involved in buying that TV. And when women buy TVs, they don't buy electronics, and they don't buy it on specs, they buy furniture. They buy things that fit into a home. And we started using different material, so brushed steel and piano lacquer and so on. And we changed the whole model, like how you sell it, how you market it, and what it looks like, from a consumer electronics position and the way you think about consumer electronics, all the stickers in the bottom of a TV, to looking at TVs as beautiful pieces of furniture that can live in a home. And I think that's what we're doing with cars in the same sort of way, that we're thinking, instead of thinking inside and out, so build a car and then sell it to the world, we figure out what's important and meaningful and relevant in people's life. And then we figure out what technology to apply to that. So it's sort of outside in instead of inside out. And that means that's important if you are in a situation where there's technology abundance, where there's a lot of technology to be applied, and where you need to choose how and which technologies to apply. And I think that's the big shift here. And I can say, as an outsider, and as somebody that doesn't get his paycheck from Ford, that what's happening in Ford is as advanced, if not more advanced, than anything I have seen in Silicon Valley or anywhere else in the world. What you will see coming out of the PDC here, in terms of thoughtful, meaningful human experiences, of course enabled by technology, but human experiences is more advanced, or at least as advanced as anything that happens in the companies that are on the front pages of Wired magazine and so on. So I think it's been exciting the last 3 years of working and seeing how a company can completely shift towards a very sophisticated and advanced way of working.
Yeah, and I know all of you are thinking, you know, what are you really talking about? What are you talking about experiences? What are you talking about this new methodology? Are there any proof points? I think the way we work together on Sync 3 and the results we've had with Sync 3 are a bit of a proof point of this aspect of really observing the experience. Interestingly enough, I think one of our teams that really understands experience very well, just intuitively, is our truck team, the F-150 team. And there's so much about that F-150 experience that's about mastery and being proud of mastering the environment, mastering a skill. And one of the features that enables mastery that we've just introduced is Pro Trailer Backup Assist, which, even the way I just talked about it as a technology and a feature, but that isn't the way we approached it. For those of you who ever backed up a trailer, that is a skill to master. And backing up a trailer at a boat launch where everybody at the dock is watching you can either be a great experience or a very humiliating experience. And that's what we mean about experience. So the experience is backing up a trailer. And when you do it well, I love the way you describe, Christian, it's just like when you actually hit that golf swing perfectly. And for me, that's about once every 90 times. But when you do that, it's a great experience. So we started with, what's the experience? And that was backing up a trailer. How can we enable everyone to feel like they're a master of backing up a trailer? And we came up with the ergonomic solution of, what if we just have a knob that you turn in the direction you want to back up the trailer, and we'll manage everything else. We'll manage the original counter steer, then turning the wheel back, holding the angle, etc. That part was actually pretty easy to figure out. Getting all the technology to support it so we could sense what direction the trailer is going and how long the wheelbase is, all the calculus that was required of maintaining the angle, that part was hard. But it was a great example of not starting with a technology and then figuring out wouldn't it be neat of just putting it in the vehicle, but starting with what the experience could be. Okay, then let's go get the technologies to enable that experience.
Yeah, and to build on that, so if you think about trucks and people that enjoy trucks, they don't care about how many pounds they can tow, really. What they do care about if they can tow that boat, and if they can have an intuition in terms of understanding if they can and can't and what it takes to do that. When they're at that mastery level, that's what people that buy trucks are looking for. And we can help them with technology, but also with the way we engage those technologies and the way we create experiences inside of the car. And if we do so, people are excited about it. And I think that's one of the things that could make this company, you know, a really hot tech company, really. That it is a place that understands how to deliver experiences that are extraordinarily meaningful. And I don't know if you can think of any company that owns as much as people's time in a space in the world as a car. A car should be, the car industry should be one of the hottest industries in the world. If you look at the big cities of the world that Mark talked about before, these people are sitting in cars for 3 to 4 hours. the kinds of things you can do in there for those 3 to 4 hours, particularly if it drives itself, are tremendous. So I think the auto industry will be a very advanced sort of experience enabler in the next 10 years. And I think what's happening in Ford is the best around.
What's really interesting for me is you've all heard the quote from Henry Ford. If I asked my customer what he wanted, it would have been a faster horse. I've used that quote a million times. I think for the first time I really understand it now. And not that the type of market research where we bring a group together and have a dialogue and an interaction and ask them questions is invaluable, but to really meet the unspoken needs, to really have an intuitive sense of what the future could possibly be that our current customers aren't even thinking about, takes this observational approach. So in many ways, we're circling all the way back to what our founder was talking about from the very beginning, which I find both ironic and somewhat exciting.
He could get a job in my firm. He was a great observational scientist. And I think that's one of the reasons why we chose to work with Ford, is that it's already in the DNA, where it's not about asking people what they want. It's about figuring out, by observing them, what would be extraordinarily delightful experiences, and how do you then deliver that in a way that they wouldn't even expect. That's what he did, and that's what we're doing now. So there's nothing new here, other than we're doing it in a very amplified way across the board in the company.
Great. Well, I think that's the amount of time that we have.